Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting ao-gp.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the Theta-Meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to ao-gp.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, and welcome to another AOGP Outside of the Church podcast. This is season 8, episode 18. I'm here with Arthur Mudakis, and we're gonna do a little bit of a different title, and this is both for old and new alike to the subject of independent Scientology and Dianetics. Explain auditing, or Scientology, or explain Dianetic auditing. In depth to people that, well, maybe you've gotten some auditing and somebody didn't, well, if you've gotten auditing in the church, they didn't explain it nearly as well as they should have. And that's very important. So we'll take some time to get across these concepts and how it works and everything like that and how it's different. So here we go. This will be a little bit of a Q&A type of a thing, and we'll see where this takes us. I think it'll be a fun one to do, because there'll probably be a lot of things in here that you didn't know about auditing, or you had incorrect from the mean old internet. So Arthur, what would be your first question in explaining auditing?
Well, what is it?
Well,
I mean, you hear it a lot, and it's like a major part of Scientology.
Yeah.
So what is it?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to start it with, sometimes you say what it isn't, what do you not want as opposed to what do you want? Well, auditing and how it's different from other modes of counseling is probably, to me, and you'll probably agree with me, I would think, is the auditor's code. And in the auditor's code,
incredible.
There's two little factors in the auditor's code that make it so very different than what you see in psychoanalysis. Even, I mean, you go down to relationships, you can apply the auditor's code with these two points, but it's do not evaluate and do not invalidate the preclear. And that is something that is something that you don't see in other modes.
So if we're to break just those two components down, right? What's evaluating someone?
Evaluating someone would be, well, it sounds like he or she is blank. They're evaluating,
like a diagnosis.
Yeah. They're telling you what to think via the word evaluation. And this is something, I mean, it's rampant throughout this society, and is a big part of the reason that this society is so manipulated, is because they are evaluated for, and they are told what to think. And that's a novel idea in handling somebody, in a mode such as auditing.
And it's interesting, like, even if we step outside of auditing, so that's one aspect of the auditor's code. But then when it comes to evaluating people, and you see it a lot, and I'm seeing this big current theme at the moment around narcissism, where people are calling people narcissists, especially in relationship situations. I broke up with my husband or my girlfriend because they're just a narcissist. Narcissist. Everybody's a narcissist. You have a shit day, you're a narcissist.
Right.
So would that be evaluating?
That would be evaluating, but the interesting thing, and you could do a podcast just on correct and incorrect evaluation, and the way that Hubbard figured this out, that evaluation, it's I'll give you the opposite side of the scale in the book Science of Survival. He says it's not evaluation if it's true. And that's true.
Ooh,
And
that could be a really hard thing to face.
that's true. And it's one, and that particular datum is one of the is a component of one of the most powerful methods of auditing that we have in Scientology, which is called listing and nulling, where you're using the meter plus the PC to find out a particular truth about something, a who, what, or why question that is reading on the meter. And if that question is reading, that means bing, 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 we have a winner. There's charge on that question. So, and I'm going way beyond this, pretty far from the basics, but evaluation is so powerful that if you let the preclear evaluate and listing and nulling properly, you can so widely change the person's life with a correct evaluation. But the evaluation isn't yours to give. All you're getting is you're getting an evaluation and giving an evaluation to the preclear from the meter, because the meter is saying what's true for the preclear. So when you get that answer from the preclear and you get a particular needle phenomena, floating needle or better, which will stay out of that because that's a whole other subject, metering, and you give it to the preclear, it is an evaluation that is true. And that is one of the most wide sweeping validations of their correct evaluation. Now that's going, wait a minute. What did you just say? But this is the technology of listing and nulling, and you are evaluating for the PC. But it is something the PC gave you. It is not something you gave the PC without knowing whether it is true.
Yep.
Only the PC knows that. Now, you could say a correct evaluation by a doctor, if they'd done all the tests and they'd say, well, you have sickle cell anemia. Okay. I have sickle cell anemia because they've done all the blood tests and they're all there. Now you have an answer to why it is your body is feeling the way that it's feeling. That doesn't mean that evaluations are wrong in the broad sense of it, but in the smaller sense, a wrong evaluation really messes with a being and causes them to stick. This is how and what auditing fixes, is a misevaluation. Now we're going all the way back to the beginning, because for anything to persist, and this is one of the reasons why auditing works at all, is because for anything to persist, there is a lie behind it. This is part of the Scientology axioms, the basic building blocks of it. So when you get a person to correctly evaluate and look at something themselves, that's the key, themselves, and you're just directing their attention. You're getting them to look at something and find out a truth that they misobserved, basically, for a lack of a better way to put it. And it seems like it's so simple, but that's the thing with Dianetics and Scientology auditing, is it's so deceptively simple. You're like, that does that? and it does. It's just
it
simple.
is very simple. Like it is a very simple procedure. But the rules that come with it can be very difficult, because how often do you want to, evaluate someone and be like, my God, you experienced this, 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 and this. Did you ever consider it was that, and that? It could be completely innocent.
Yeah.
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 And as the auditor, you may get excited seeing these incredible wins from the PC. And there's that compelling urge to want to say something about their case. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's
like, especially from your end, you can hear it coming from the PC, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And the PC is struggling to understand it. And there's this compelling urge to be like, God, can't you see it? It's like this,
right.
and this. The math is perfect.
Yeah. Every day.
But you
every
can't.
day. But you can't, because they, people think, well, they're the auditor, they're going to be taking care of my case and everything, and it's like, not really. You will be doing the heavy lifting on this.
Yeah.
I'm just repeating the
Yeah.
question and getting you to look in a particular area. That cave over there with that funny light coming out of it, let's go take a look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
looks
Yeah.
okay. It
Yeah.
looks fine. No, just keep looking. Let's go in. You sure? Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if
Yeah.
this, keep
Yeah.
going, and
Yeah.
that's the funny thing, is that the whole trip is like that. No matter what auditing process, you
Yeah.
sure there's something? I don't know. I'm not really feel. Just keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
It's that trust the process thing,
Yeah.
but you can't tell the PC, you can't feed
Yeah.
them a cognition, a realization, an
That's right.
epiphany about this.
That's right.
You have to get them to look, to confront, to see that thing there that is altered. Well, I thought it was a quartz crystal. No, 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 no. That's shale. Oh, wow. Well, that changes
But what if
everything.
I'm working with someone? What if I'm working with someone as the auditor and you're going through the cave and I'm like, come on, it's the cave from, your third past life ago.
Uh-huh.
And, aren't you there yet?
Yeah, well, and that tells you, and this is an important basic auditing uh concept, is that the more recent charge, well, and you can use the cave analogy just as easily, is if you're a geologist or an archaeologist, how do you find an earlier civilization? Is it on the surface? Well, if it's
Yeah.
been any length of time, even 5-10 years type of a thing, it's probably covered by some layer of more recent debris. Well, guess what?
Yep.
Auditing works the same way. It's charge. And if you get off the more recent charge, the earlier charge pops into view,
Yep.
whether
Yep.
it's Scientology or whether it's Dianetics. And that
Yep.
that is the thing as an auditor, is it, and I mean, it's just, I used to worry so much because when I got trained at Flag at the time, and this is in 1988, this wasn't that long after LRH had left, and things had started to get weird. I used to worry about hurting a PC, and they made it so dangerous, and everything had to just be
Mm.
so everything perfect, and everything had to be in place. And I,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this or not. Their head might fall off.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But the thing
Yep.
is that if you trust the process, and you work with somebody to train you as a case supervisor helping an intern auditor, you start to see that everything that he says is true. And if something
Mm.
isn't working, and he talks about a hidden data line, that maybe there's something somebody's not telling me, it's not in any of the books, and what if that, and you get into a frenzy about the whole thing. You don't have to, because he took the time he took the time to write this stuff down and say, okay, it's going to be this or this.
Yep.
Really?
Okay.
Surely there's something else. No, 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 it isn't. If the person can't find it, it's only a few things. And you go, well, that's just too easy. And then when you get past that's just too easy, and it's sort of like, I don't believe this story. And you're watching the series, and finally you get invested in it, and your disbelief gets set aside, and you're just totally invested. Well, it's like that. Once you see it happen with a PC, and you see a PC get to their third past life type of a thing, and they're totally blown
Yep.
away by it, and you see how this stuff is unfolding for them. I mean, I've had several PCs, two in one family, that within the first session to the third session, they both had gone past life, one on an interview, and one in just a regular uh, life repair session. And they both looked at me and went,
Yep.
is this, they both said the same thing, is this shit real?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And LRA says, nothing in this life can aberrate you. Well, that's pretty true. because
I agree with that statement.
yeah, it isn't anything in this
Yeah,
life that's doing it. It's the stuff that's earlier, that's further down in the
already
archaeological
happened.
dig,
That's right.
that's already happened, that's causing this stuff to happen. And it's sort of like a ship that sets sail and leaves London trying to get to the United States and ends up in, you know, somewhere in South America. They just keep going further and further
Yep.
off course. And that's why, and this brings us all the way back to why you don't evaluate for somebody.
Yep.
You know why you don't evaluate for somebody?
All right. So before you discuss evaluating, what is sorry, that is evaluating. What about invalidating?
Well, invalidation is
What is it? What is
even worse.
invalidating?
Well, invalidation is saying that something that is true has less or no meaning than you thought it did by somebody else or yourself. That's even worse. That's even worse.
Yep.
Believe it or not, because at the end of the day, all evaluation and all invalidation only has its power not from somebody else, but from yourself. Think about that one. Let that bake in your noodle for a minute. Only from yourself. And in auditing in general, it isn't anything anybody else did to you at all. It's something that you bought into yourself. Now, if that isn't of a godlike quality, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. But telling somebody that, you can't tell them that. That's evaluation.
Well,
So you're right back where you started. So they have to figure it out for themselves.
but the hard thing about being invalidated is once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. And it's that
Exactly.
battle of putting somebody else's words to sleep somehow.
Yeah.
Like if you came to me, no different to a child coming home with a beautiful piece of artwork that they've, and it's just a kid drawing. It's just scribbles and whatever. And as an adult, you don't think much of it. But the child is just so chuffed that they've brought home this, scribbly lined drawing, and the parents are just like, "Oh yeah, that's great." Like that would be an invalidation. The child's joy all of a sudden
right
just diminishes.
Yeah, well, they thought mom and dad would be really proud of what they did, and they wanted to get some acknowledgement. And that brings into one of the things, one of the third thing that is correct, and it's another shun, Tion suffix word, validation, evaluation, invalidation, validation. That's what you're talking about there. But see, validation at the end of the day still falls under that umbrella of what you believe and what you don't believe.
True. So it's still in the same basket as the other two in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah. And, it's important to validate a person for things that are, pro-survival, right? True. You don't want to go to somebody and say, you are really a good, truly evil person. Might not want to validate somebody on that. For obvious reasons, but I'm just, I'm trying to be humorous about it. But a little validation goes a long way with a child. Same with an adult. I mean, in some cases, it might hit even harder with an adult because they have a better understanding. The higher your IQ, the weirder things get. They say that some people with higher IQs tend to be depressed and cuss more, because they actually have a much better understanding of the world around them and how fucked truly things are. So there's a downside to that. But the thing is what's not mentioned is responsibility. And that comes into, what auditing is trying to do and everything like that, is because evaluation and invalidation they themselves are modes of irresponsibility, depending on who you're talking about. The evaluator, who is evaluating for somebody, or the person who is receiving the evaluatee, who is receiving the evaluation. Because we're all quote unquote preclears. A preclear is somebody who is receiving auditing who is not yet at the point of clear. So everybody is somebody who is receiving auditing. Even if they're clear, then they become a pre-OT. But at the end of the day, there's somebody who receives auditing from somebody else, or they do solo
Yep.
auditing by themselves. So you can't evaluate and invalidate and expect anything to go correctly for somebody else as somebody's auditor. And it's even worse. And this comes back to what we've been talking about in the last few podcasts about clearing words and everything like that too, is that
Mm-hmm.
if you
Yep.
don't have the correct definitions of something, there is no way that you yourself can properly evaluate a situation. And LRH wrote the whole data series of policy letters called the data series, that the correct why opens the door to handling a situation that is out. Instead of an ideal scene, you have a rotten situation that isn't working. And the only way to find the correct why is to understand the terminology of how logic works. And that
Yep.
logic, the underpinnings of logic are not only the concepts that he delineates in the policies, those policy letters, and that you apply to get things back to their ideal scene, because you know how they fell apart from it. The correct ideal scene tells you, okay, here's the why. The door was left open and
Yep.
all of the computers were stolen at night. That's the correct why on why the business can't function, is out security. That's a correct why.
Yep.
Well, in
Yep.
auditing, the data, when you look at it, you go, okay, I figured it out. Now I know why he wrote the data series, because the data series is what auditing does. You're finding the correct why in a particular cave in a person's case, if you will, to use that analogy, where there's this concept that a person is operating off of that causes them to do X instead of Y. That's
Yep.
the best way I can put it without
All
getting
right.
a long, drawn out thing. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. So so I learned about the auditor's code a few years ago.
Mhm.
And it took me some time um, to completely understand it, to completely understand the importance of why it's been created the way it has. Um, and what I find really cool about the auditor's code is if you apply that to your everyday life,
Mhm.
um,
You'll be a lot
it
better
it
off.
really changes. Well, and it changes your dynamic with people you associate with as well. Because there's that whole aspect as well of allowing somebody their beingness. And I think the auditor's code really helps you um, have some guidelines around to allowing somebody to have some beingness. You know,
Mhm.
you can't evaluate them, you can't invalidate them. You've got to be respectful. You know, there's so many things to the auditor's code because it's how many points is there to the auditor's code?
Over 20.
There's like 18 or
Yeah,
something.
it's right,
Yeah,
right around 20, I believe. Yeah,
yeah,
and
and
some of them
then
are more, germane. You know,
yeah, yeah,
but I mean, if you look at it,
be on time and that kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. If you haven't, if you haven't eaten and you haven't been properly fed, well, then your body
Yep,
rudiments, the things that you need in order to function properly, are out.
yep,
If you haven't eaten, you haven't slept, that type of a thing. Well, you need to look at that, because we all have our cases, or our minds, or reactive minds, and the body is a huge influence on it and has to be taken into consideration in that equation of, is this
yeah.
person auditable or not? That's also part of the auditor's code.
But also during the auditing as well, it can be quite draining on the body too. Spending
Oh
so
yeah,
much time
even an
as the
hour.
body's, changing itself and trying to, I mean, your body's like works like a computer. It's like, you consider defragging a computer can take hours.
Yeah,
And I suppose the brain kind of goes through a similar thing around engrams where,
yeah,
you've got a fragmented idea of a past situation, or you may not even realize there was a past situation until it presents itself. And then you go through a defragging process, and that can be a little exhausting too.
it is auditing takes it out of you, and it's important to
Yeah,
eat right, and take supplements, B1 especially, um
yeah,
and B complex. So it's hard on a being in a body to to get auditing because you find yourself, you get tired, you get hungry, you know, to take a break, let me go get something to eat,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how old they are.
Yeah.
You know, that type of
Yeah.
thing. It's better to get auditing earlier in the day than it is later in the day because the body gets tired. And, you know, bodies are fragile things. So it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
important to understand that, you know, you're a composite being, which we've mentioned in other podcasts, that you have to take these things into consideration. But as you're defragging the reactive mind, which is a great analogy because that's what you're doing, is you're defragmenting and you're putting all of these parts together, not necessarily as a program, but in
Yeah.
another way, auditing is not reprogramming you. It is allowing you to write your own code and not use past programs that didn't work. That
Yeah.
would be a good way to put
Yeah.
it.
And sometimes you're able to catch some of those viruses that are affecting your operating system. You
Yeah.
know, you can get down to those Trojan horse programs and remove them.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I
and
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
because if there's a door open there for restimulation where something gets triggered, then you know now you're at the effect of this thing that's the Trojan horse. And I mean we see that throughout society all the time. And that's why bad news sells and people are interested in bad news and they're not so interested in good news. It's because that's what the
Mm-hmm.
reactive mind feeds off of. And I mean, you know, it sickens me a little bit to pander to these algorithms on YouTube and things like that that boost negativity. I mean,
It's
the internet is driven by negativity. Why is it driven by negativity? It's because they found that the best way to sell advertising is to re-stimulate through negativity. So then they balance these
right.
algorithms to get you to look at something that's negative. This is why newspapers sell bad news. This is why the media does what they do. And this is what auditing handles, is these Trojan horses that get in and re-stimulate you.
All right. So you guys offer Dianetic auditing
Mm-hmm.
without the meter, yeah?
Without the
So
e-meter.
let's just focus on let's just focus on that for a bit, like without the meter.
Uh-huh.
So um so how would an auditing session work without an meter? Like if you were to, like, let's say somebody's listening to this and they have absolutely no idea what auditing is.
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea what a PC is. They have no idea what an auditor is.
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea of how a session would actually operate.
Mm-hmm.
What what would it look like?
Well, let me pull this up here. And I'll give you a really good example here. If I can find it real quick. Just and I'm going to go over this line by line real quick and go, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Here it is.
Yep. Yep.
Procedure. There it is. Okay. So, and we were talking about the auditor's code and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
we can kind of run that in there along here. So when you take somebody in a Dianetics auditing session, and it's so deceptively simple, it's ridiculous. The first line is assure your preclear that they will know everything that happens. The session is done with you and your
Mm,
preclear seated across from each other. In the first step, inform the preclear about what will be occurring during the session. You can tell the preclear the following. We'll begin the session now. You will remain aware of everything which goes on. You will be able to remember everything that happens here. You can pull yourself out of anything which you get into if you don't like it. Stop right there and you just go, okay, how is this so different than anything else out there? Because you're keeping the person at a slight, gentle cause, and they're in
yep.
control of what's going on and what they're remembering. You're not evaluating for them and saying, go deeper, go deeper, go deeper, you know, that type of a thing. So
Yep.
they're
Yep.
at cause. So you tell the pre-clear to close their eyes. They close their eyes and you give them a canceller. And this is, again, this is original Dianetic procedure. It's different with the meter now, but this is the 1950 version. In the future, when I utter the word canceled, everything I've said to you while you're in a therapy session will be canceled and will have no force with you. Any suggestion I've made to you will be without force when I say the word canceled. Do you understand? You make sure that the
Yep.
preclear understands this. That's important. You're keeping them at cause. You're not trying to hypnotize them or anything. What do you want to say?
Well, and the good thing about even just that preamble before going into the session, you're actually asking them permission to proceed as well.
Right. Right. They
Yeah.
are giving you permission to proceed. And this is something that has to be done, and how radically different auditing is, even from in the 1950 version. The 2024 version isn't really any different. I mean, we take people in session with these particular steps 100%, 5 days a week.
Yep.
So you're not evaluating and you're not invalidating anything by anything that we've said here. So you get the person to
Yes.
return the preclear to a period in the past. Tell the preclear you will begin by running an incident from their past that the preclear feels they can comfortably face. You can say something like, "We're going to find an incident in your life of which you have an exact record. Then by sending you through it at the moment it happened several times, we're going to reduce it." So what you're doing
Yep.
there is you're reducing it by getting them to look over it. And as they look over it, you're pulling off this mental charge, this mental debris, the lies on the thing, to where they can look at it as it is. That's the
Yes.
important thing. That's what auditing does, is it gets you to look at things as they are, as ising the lies. So you have the person locate an incident that they feel they can comfortably face. Key point, go to the beginning of that incident. You tell them. And you work with a file clerk, which is their memory, basically. And you say to them, okay, go through the incident and say what is happening to you as we go along. And you reduce the incident, go back to the beginning, go over it, pick up whatever additional data you contact. Important part, the more additional data they contact means that we're getting as isness. We're taking the alter isness,
Yep.
the way things were altered, the lies off. We're getting an isness that turns into an as isness. And you ask them to tell you, what do you see, what do you hear, that sort of a thing. And they continue on. And then once they've gotten cheerful about it, you have achieved an as isness. Now, the only difference between this Dianetic auditing and New Era Dianetics, which came out in 1977, 78, is
Mm.
with New Era Dianetics and a meter, which helps you see how much charge is on the case as you're running these incidents, you're getting off the postulate in New Era
Yep.
Dianetics, which is the decision that they made at that time. And when you pull
Mm.
that postulate off, because this is how you get from London down into South America when you were trying to find the new world, is you go a little bit off course, you make a decision. You a little bit off course, you make another decision. A little bit more off course, you make another decision. And the next thing you know, you're
Well, those
sitting in an alleyway.
decisions, yeah, but those decisions become future justifications for
Right.
not achieving things as well.
That's right.
So while you're going through those experiences, you're just creating a bank of justifications of why you shouldn't or why you should. And those shoulds could be as simple as, to defend myself, I need to be angry.
Yeah.
Or it could be, I'd really like that, but last time I did something for myself, it went really bad, so I'm not even going to bother. So
Yep.
on one hand, it can create really, really bad reactive behavior, because you don't know any other way, and you've got the perfect justifications to behave that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, you may give away dreams in this lifetime that you've wanted to achieve, but you've chosen to give them away out of past experiences that have created fear for gaining. It's really unique.
Yeah.
But talk about as isness a bit, because you mentioned that quite a few times. And it's not a small topic either. To as is
No.
something like what is, and to be fair, when we were doing our auditing, it took me a while to sort of grasp the concept of seeing something for as it is.
Right.
Like that is an extremely confronting approach to something,
Well, there's a
especially when you're in a space of blaming someone for something they did to you.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how do you see a situation for as it is when somebody, you've got somebody to blame?
Yeah. Well, there's a concept that they mention on the American TV show How I Met Your Mother, the glass shattering moment. When you have this realization about something that you had no idea was there, and you're just, oh my God, it's that epiphany.
Yeah.
And that's when
Yeah.
you're being presented with a datum that aligns with other datums, and you start seeing things from a completely different perspective, because you basically, what happens when a person, through Dianetics or Scientology concepts, you are the builder of your own maze. And whether that maze is convoluted and you can't find your way out, which is what the reactive mind does, and what you do with the reactive mind, or you go from point A to point B in a straight line. But most people create a maze, and what Dianetics is doing and what Scientology is doing through, shades different procedures, is you're taking apart wall by wall, section by section, these parts of a maze. And that maze is created through you altering reality. And you're saying, that's a this, it's not a that. That's a this, it's not a that. That's a this, it's not a that. That's all. That is all you are doing. Is you're telling you're lying to yourself about something from the standpoint of, and it's a tough pill to swallow, but as isness is one of the four states of being. You've got alter isness, not isness, and alter isness. What happens in an auditing session is the act of all of those things, not isness, alter isness, and isness, coming to the point of as isness. You're looking at it because an isness is we're fucked. Okay, that's an isness. Okay, we're fucked. There's a giant dragon at the entrance to the cave, and they're blocking the way. We are truly in deep doo-doo. Okay, that's the isness. Okay, but the thing is that dragon is defeatable, and that dragon may not even be there, but you've got yourself convinced of it. That is the isness that you think. And so you're not ising the fact that you might be able to get out. You're alter-ising the fact that you can't get out. And the isness is that there's a dragon in the way and we're fucked. Well, the thing is what auditing gets you to realize is the dragon is something you've created of your own creation. Nobody else has. Okay. And people say, well, what about that? Well, that's all fine and that's subjective, but what about real life? Well, I got news for you. I got news for you. It isn't any different in real life than it is subjectively in your head, folks. Okay.
I actually remember the day it actually hit me completely. And it was during one of our sessions. And it wasn't straight Dianetic auditing. But your question was, okay, what did this person to you? And I'm just rattling things off. They lied to me. They yelled at me. They did this. They did that. Blah, 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 blah. I went on for, I don't know, 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was a while.
Just of how much crap, this person did to me. And then you ask me, straight up question, okay, what did you do to them? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything to them. And you're like, uh-huh. And I'm like, I don't understand the question. I didn't do anything. I'm the victim in this. And then you ask me the most simple question. Did you yell at them? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I did. I had my justification of yelling at them. And then you're like, okay, did you lie to them? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I did. I had my justifications for behaving just as poorly. And that's when the penny dropped. I'm like, oh, man.
Justifications are what hold these things in place.
And yeah.
And back to the analogy with the dragon and being stuck in there on this altar is that the
Yes.
dragon exists and everything. Okay. Well, I feel completely justified by being cornered by a dragon. God damn it. I'm going to stand here and I'm
Yes.
getting turned into a
Yes.
human barbecue by this dragon because I deserve it.
Yes. 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 Yes.
That's how it's going to be. God damn it. And lifetime after lifetime, people do these things. It's the, and
Yes.
it's getting somebody to go, well, I'm a victim of circumstance. You don't understand, Your Honor.
Yep.
Well, guess what?
Yep.
You
Yep.
are your own judge and jury. You're the one that put
Yep.
yourself on trial. You're the one that brought the case to court. You're the one that created the case in the first place.
Yep.
In
And
the
it's
first
interesting
place.
because even in a court situation, what do they focus on? They focus on facts, not hearsay. They
Yeah.
don't care about your justifications. They don't care about why you did something
Yeah.
unless there's a fact attached to it.
Yeah. Right. And
Where's the evidence?
right. That
What
is
actually happened?
yeah. What actually happened? What is the truth of the matter?
Yep.
Were you there on September 13th, 1923, pulling the trigger
Yep.
on that pistol? That type of
Yeah,
thing.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I did do it. Okay. That's an engram. That's an
Yep.
engram. Pain and unconsciousness. And you handle that
Yep.
with Dianetics. You handle that with Scientology. And you're getting the person to look at it. Okay, who was holding the gun?
Yep.
Who pulled the trigger? What were your justifications for it? And
Yep.
the neat thing about Dianetics is it's not, you're not pulling teeth with it. In Scientology,
Yep.
you're getting down to the nitty gritty, the down and dirty at an appropriate time. It's not just boom, you have to handle this thing right there. It's very much a gradient. Well, in Dianetics, and this is what Hubbard says, 1960 in the State of Man Congress, this is the only reason Dianetics works is because everybody can be a victim.
Yeah, that's
Everybody
right.
can be a victim. When I
Well,
heard
initially everybody is a victim,
initially everybody is a victim, and he says, if I wrote
and
a
then they
book,
realize, uh-oh,
yeah, go
maybe
ahead.
I wasn't so much of a victim,
Right,
and
right,
maybe I wasn't this. And it's like, oh my God, they didn't yell at me because of that. They yelled at me because, I was being naughty.
yeah,
They yelled at me because they didn't hate me. They yelled at me because I was about to spill something hot on my little body.
right,
They
right,
weren't yelling at me because they didn't like the way I looked. They yelled at me because I was about to get hit by a car.
yeah,
And they're those elements that we tend to really I don't know, just the way the body records these things. It records the initial impact, but it doesn't record all the elements around it. And that's what auditing does. It helps you see those other elements
uh-huh,
that your body did record to such a degree, but as far as its survival aspect to keep you alive,
yeah,
it's the impact of something that really gets ingrained. And then all those other finer details all of a sudden don't seem to exist. You
yeah,
don't recognize that you don't recognize that half the things that did happen to you weren't necessarily wholeheartedly intentional, or they had a story. Unless you saw it with your own eyes, you would never believe. And that's
yeah,
what auditing does. It allows you to see those things as they were, not
yeah.
what you thought they were.
Right. And I mean,
Yeah.
it goes down to, you mentioned, through your own eyes, it goes down to when a person is taking on somebody else's valence, they're seeing it through their own eyes. Whatever that
Yeah.
valence is, they're
Yeah.
seeing it through the eyes of the valence they're in. When I say they're seeing it through their own eyes, they're not seeing it as a being who runs a body. And so
Yep.
even in Dianetics, you're trying to sort out these things because people become other people to escape not being able to survive. And this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
something he figured out very early on about valences because it comes up so often in auditing. So it's
Actually,
important. Go ahead.
valences would be a good one to do a
Yeah.
podcast on.
Yeah. Well, we've
Actually, that'd be
done
a
one,
really
but
good one to do.
there's a lot more that can be said about this, and it's very important
Yeah.
to understand that uh, when you're approaching something with Dianetics auditing, you're approaching it from such a basic level. We don't care whose valence you're in. We don't care about
Hmm.
anything other than the fact that we want you to find something that you can comfortably face, and we can run out with Dianetic procedure. And that's one less marble in the bucket of reactivity that you have.
Yep.
We don't care about how it connects to this or how it doesn't connect to this. If it's something you want to comfortably confront, we're going to run it. And you can do that with
Yep.
anything on any of the flows. Now, original book one Dynamics, as we delineated here just a little bit earlier, isn't done on flows, others to you, you to others, others to others, you to yourself. That came a lot later,
Hmm.
and that's part of Scientology auditing, and then it became part of Dianetic procedure as well. So these two, they
Yep.
mesh really well. But at the end of the day, it is you taking responsibility for being there and communicating and making decisions about things and making
Yep.
them stick. So whether
Yep.
you're brushing your teeth and you're doing it twice a day, you made a decision to brush your teeth. You made a decision to be in the physical universe, and you picked up a body, and you can't blame your parents for everything.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm rolling up my sleeves here on this, but the thing is, from an auditing standpoint, to get back to the evaluation and the invalidation part, you as an auditor, the guy, the woman listening to this podcast, you as an auditor, what you are doing is you do not care, you are not judging, you're not evaluating, you are not invalidating. You are doing something so unique and odd for planet Earth as to sit there and listen and just acknowledge and have a communication cycle with somebody with these steps, Dianetic steps.
Yep.
You can change a person's life in a way that they have not had it changed for trillinia with this simple,
Yep.
simple procedure. And that's all that it takes. And you are giving them a ladder out of a well they have been stuck in for a very, very long time. And they will finally rise to the surface and see that there is a stable place to stand and where they are. And they can see the trees for the forest and the clouds in the sky and realize their relativity to everything is far, far different than they ever imagined because they're in a maze of their own making.
And the thing is, it's to get there, like as far as all those elements that you just discussed, it's very innocent. To
Yeah.
get to that point in life where you are so lost and you are stuck in a maze, it's extremely innocent. I mean, yeah, there are elements out there that will push you towards that as well. But as far as the way the body works, the body's working so appropriately, even though there are times where you reach points in your life where you feel so low and you feel that there's no option. It's just an accumulation of these things that build up, build up, build up, and then you're so aberrated in your everyday state, you don't know how to move forward, you don't know how to do anything. All those things that you thought you knew, all of a sudden you don't. But
Mhm.
then if you go through a procedure like this, it will definitely open that door because it'll give you such an understanding of things you thought were were hardships. You'll actually realize some of those you created yourself.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a level of honesty that comes with an understanding like that you can't deny when you see it. And then when you wholeheartedly see it in such a profound way, you fix it,
Mhm.
you acknowledge it.
Mhm.
You can't really deny it. Now, if somebody does get to that stage and it's so clear in their mind space through the auditing, at that point, that could be a turning point for some people to say, you know what, I'm out. They don't want to confront it and they want to stay that way.
Mhm.
And the cool thing is, they're actually allowed to stay that way if they want to.
Yeah, because it's their own determinism. We've had
That's
people
right.
say on our YouTube channel, where there's all these codes and these rules and and it's just oh, it's just oh. you know, and you look at it and you go, well, that is where
You're
they're
allowed
at,
to.
and
Yeah.
you're allowed to feel that way. And what's true for you is true for you. We're not telling you
Yeah.
anything that you have to be, do, or have. That's totally up to you. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't work, well, good luck with that. And I really sincerely hope it works out for you. But we're saying,
Yeah.
this is a different way you can look at this thing, and you can be a cause over yourself and of life, and take the responsibility for the decisions you've made and the decisions you're going to make. And the better decisions you make are based off of the successes you've had, to where you say, okay, now this is how you get to North America. I see
Hmm.
where we went wrong here. We got caught in these trade winds, and okay, I made a wrong decision. Okay, now I can get to my destination, which was my original postulate in the first place. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. That's
You know,
right.
it's not just
Well,
physical universe.
let's talk what auditing is not.
Okay, what
So it's not
auditing?
hypnosis.
It is not hypnosis by any stretch of
It's
the imagination at all.
it's not, no, at all. It's not brainwashing. It's
No,
not
no, because you're in control of what's going on. Nobody's evaluating, like we said, nobody's evaluating or
yes.
invalidating you. We're just asking you questions. It's no different than Jerry Seinfeld being up on a stage and saying, "Did you ever notice dot dot dot?" And
Yep.
and if it's
Yep.
funny to you, and this is part of the data series, is if something is funny to you, laughter is rejection of an alter isness. That's what
Yep.
humor is you're looking at it and
That's
going,
right.
that's just so ridiculous.
That's so
Harry
true.
is so
Yeah.
right about that. That's what you're doing. Okay. It's no different
That's
than
right.
Jerry Seinfeld telling you a joke. All we're saying is these are
Yep.
areas you might want to take a look. There might be some morel mushrooms there that you can cook up in some nice tasty butter, and hey, this tastes good, but you won't know until you look.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
it.
Yep.
We're just
Okay.
directing your attention.
So how would you compare it to, say, and like, I don't want to potty mouth other modalities,
Yeah.
but if we were to just do a comparison, how would you compare auditing to, say, a standard sort of counseling session?
Well, I would say that counseling session, you know, depending on who's doing it, because that has a lot to do with it, what their particular tone level is on the chart of attitudes, the tone scale, might be helpful, might not be helpful. It might be more helpful if they had experience in Buddhist techniques, or it might not be so
Mm,
helpful if they had more experience in psychiatric techniques. I mean, there's the influence that they have, and if they evaluate for you, they're very likely going to evaluate for you. But I'm
yeah.
not going to use a broad brush and say they're all this way. There are some
Yep.
genuine psychologists and psychiatrists out there who don't hurt people. It would be a generality to
All
say
right.
that is the case. But in the big picture, you're not going to be self-determined. You're going to have evaluation. You're going to have invalidation, whether it's
Yep.
marriage
All
counseling,
right.
whether it's addiction counseling, whether it's a 12-step program. That I mean, I'll just give you an example, and this is going to be controversial. In the
Yep.
12-step program, you're putting it in the hands of God
Hmm.
right there. Now, somebody could say, well, so, well,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just leave that. I'll leave that right there, and you take a look at that and what you conceive of it to be in what's true for you. And I'm looking at this as an auditor. Maybe that's true for you, and you're okay with that, and you can get out of whatever it is that you're addicted to and put it in the hands of God, or maybe not. I mean,
Well, have you ever looked at the 12-step program?
oh, I've read them many, many times. I've been to meetings. I've
So,
talked to guys. I've helped guys at meetings and things like that, and they were stuck.
yep.
They were stuck
Yep.
because they put the responsibility at somebody else's feet, so to
Well,
speak.
there are elements. in the 12-step program as well, where it does push them to take responsibility for their actions as well.
And that is very true. And I'm using this because it is such a common, and I got to back up. There are a lot of things on this planet that are this as good as we've got. Okay, as
Yep.
far as technologies, and they're
Yep.
not great as good as we've got. 12 steps is about as good as you can get from a group processing standpoint, where everybody sits there and they tell their story. Well, believe it or not,
Yep.
it is a little bit of Dianetics procedure. They're getting to tell their story once. But if they sat there and they let
Yep.
them tell their story over and over again, they would get so much better just with that tiny little change. And this answers your question just from a 12 steps thing. Is just from there, and I forget what they said. Give me the strength to recognize something I can't.
Oh, the serenity prayer.
Yeah, the serenity prayer.
Bloody, I can't remember what it is.
To basically
God
handle
grant
that
me the
which I
strength
can, grant
to
me the
do.
strength to do what I can, and what something.
Let me see if
That's
I
as
can
good
find
as
it,
it gets.
because it is quite a nice prayer.
Yeah.
Here it is. Okay, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And
There's
that's a
nothing
very
wrong with
powerful
that.
statement.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking it, but that's as good as we've got.
Yeah.
That's as good as we've got.
It's interesting because
go ahead.
Sorry.
That's right.
It's interesting because even Ron Hubbard speaks quite highly of the 12-step program as well. In some of his lectures, he mentions it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I found pretty interesting. Yeah, it's just a little side thing.
Yeah, well, and it's close, but not quite in a lot of ways, and that's where things are at on this planet. And it's the unfortunate nature that, how can I monetize this? How can I monetize this? How can I monetize that? And that's the thing. When you're looking at Dianetic auditing procedure and you look at like Quentin Stroud, he did over 400 hours of this Dianetics procedure that we were going over a little earlier in the podcast. Guy went cleared.
Yep.
He went cleared.
Yep.
And became cause over his own reactive mind. Now that's a really, really great step beyond saying, there's only the things I can do and the things I can't do, and recognizing the things that I can't do. You can do anything that you want. People say, oh, well, I'm not going to have a $250 million yacht like, that guy from Amazon. We're not talking about having, I mean, you can if you want to. You just get a bright idea.
I mean, well, we can take another look at that as well. Accepting the things you can't, but there's and a big element there of recognizing an ability you may not have, but recognizing it and acknowledging it is power in itself, because now you have a choice.
Yeah.
Whether you want to learn to change, or at least now you've got an avenue for some kind of change just by acknowledging things that you cannot.
Yeah. Well, I already said it's in a reference in the early 60s. Girl has a goal of wanting to become a dancer. She's a one-legged girl. This is an unrealistic goal. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just saying, this is what he says, and it's true. It's an unrealistic goal.
Yep.
Does that mean that you cannot be happy? Does it mean that you cannot be creative? Creativity and happiness go hand in hand. Ethics, happiness, creativity go hand in hand. You can be creative in other ways, but the thing is what auditing is handling is getting a person to look at the fact that maybe dancing is not for you with one leg, and then figuring out what it is that you can do that will make you feel creative and make you happy. and that you can be cause over it.
And there's an as-isness in that as well.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Because the most powerful thing, powerful thing about auditing and what auditing does is it takes you from I can't change my mind to I can change my mind. My mind,
yeah,
I have no mind, and then you're
yeah,
and there you are, and you're not imbuing yourself into the physical universe, and you look at this and you go, wow, this thing can become a trap, this physical universe, and I am not of it. Okay.
yeah,
And from there, and that's hard to describe, it's hard to explain, but it's part of doing Scientology and Dianetics, getting to a point to where you're above this and you just look at it and go, I can change this whole thing around right now,
yeah,
and
yep,
I can do
yep,
this,
yep,
and not believing it, but making it happen. And that's what
yep,
this stuff does. And it's something you don't see. To get back to your question, what auditing isn't. Auditing auditing isn't anything other than getting you to change your mind about something and be able to realize that that is the most powerful ability that you have. Is
yeah,
changing your mind really isn't even a fair statement. It is just, if you want something to happen, it can happen, and it doesn't require the physical
yeah,
universe to happen. And it's a change in modality, the way that you think, or you could say it's a change in the frequency that you're operating off of, if you want to get into some of these other modalities. It is whatever you are, whatever you want to be. It isn't the auditing. The auditing is a tool, like a screwdriver is to getting
yeah,
something
yeah,
done. That's what auditing is. And why not have a tool like that that may not give you the answers, but it gives you the ability to find the answers you're looking for, whatever they are. And I don't mean looking it up in a dictionary or looking it up somewhere. You can just know. You just
yeah,
know
yeah.
that this is the case, and it's unshakable. And you don't even have to pay anybody for it when it comes to doing Dianetic auditing. You can co-audit this stuff and change your life
That's right.
completely. I mean, what?
And I have to say, like, over the years, because I'm quite an explorer with these kinds of things, I've studied so many modalities, many different modalities,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as as far as Dianetic auditing goes, it's the cleanest modality I've ever come across.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can say it. It is so bloody clean um, in its approach because it has its rules and it's got strict rules.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying on one of the other podcasts, once you've done it a few times, you don't even need the card that goes with it.
You
You
just
don't need to, because the rules that are
yeah,
set in place as the auditor, you can't mess up unless you mess it up.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And you don't need to follow this step, and you don't need to. It's you can loosen up with it as you get into it, but
Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to
it's
break somebody if you
within
change
a
two words or
certain.
something. Yeah.
No, that's right. That's right. You can incorporate your own language because, like, as I mean, the questions are very simple. Like, it's simple
Yeah.
as.
Yeah.
Um, but it's clean. It's so bloody clean. I can't express that enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, your chances of putting an idea into someone's head is
Mm-hmm.
zero.
Yeah.
You telling someone what to do is zero. You telling someone how to do something is zero.
Mm-hmm.
You getting cranky with that person for where they're at is zero.
Right.
It's it's just completely clean. It's definitely the cleanest thing, the simplest thing. And like you were saying with the co-auditing as well, like I remember there was one podcast you did with Quentin, and he did 300 and something hours with a friend of his,
400, over 400.
400 hours, just
Uh-huh.
him and somebody else
Yep. A day in
at
and
their
day out.
house, at a cafe, over the phone, whatever it took. And if you really break down 400 hours, it's actually not that much
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, that's
at
that's a
all.
that's a 40 hour work week for 10 weeks.
That's right. That's right. And even if you did that 300 hours or 400 hours over 2 years,
And that's what he did.
and that's an incredible amount of self-discovery, an absolute incredible amount. Like
Hmm.
the things this man has learned about his own being.
Hmm.
Like, how do you beat that?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
nobody's told him how to do it. Nobody's told him
Nope.
what he should be thinking.
Right.
Nobody's told him how he should think.
That's what
Nobody's
auditing isn't.
told him to pray for it. Nobody's told him to do a dream wish board. Nobody's told him to do this. Nobody's told him nothing.
Yeah.
He's been given the opportunity to be his own being
Hmm.
every step of the way
Yeah.
without influence. And if there was an influence, it's because he chose it.
Yeah. And it's important to note that, yeah, it is just doing book one Dianetics is a good way to get auditing and do it with as a co-audit type of thing. It's not for
Yeah.
everybody, and it's a long road to hoe.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
doesn't cover certain aspects, but if you've got nothing else and you're out in the field, or I mean, whatever. But I mean, these things exist, and there's a ton of technology that came after this, because LRH was looking for a better route to clear, a better route to clear, a better route to clear for decades. And he went back every time he went back to good old Dianetics, his words, not mine, good old Dianetics. And in using a meter and new aerodynamics and finding these different ways to handle this stuff. And in the current grade chart, the way that it's set up and getting a person properly set up to do Dianetics, it's amazing how bright and shiny a person is when they've gotten all of this other Scientology auditing. It comes before new aerodynamics.
Yeah.
And, there is
Yep.
something to be
Yep.
said for that. And, that is not minimizing a person who goes clear on just regular Dianetics either.
Yep.
All we're
Yep.
saying is we're talking about auditing in general, and that there is a tremendous benefit from the way that it is approached, in that the person gets auditing, and how it works is deceptively simple. And in a
Yes.
world full of complexities, where everything is designed to baffle you with bullshit instead of dazzle you with brilliance, this is dazzling somebody with brilliance because it is so deceptively simple.
Look, I've helped a lot of people, like with one or two situations going on in their life, and I'm not talking, we're doing hundreds of hours of auditing with them, but they might have a situation going on, and one
Mhm.
session could really help them resolve just that one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll give them such an insight as to why they've ended up where they have. They're just like, oh my God, now they have the freedom to make healthier decisions about how to resolve whatever situation they're in.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, and I've done that hundreds of times with people, just with
Yeah.
basic Dianetic auditing
Yep.
on the street, over the phone. Um, and that's not aiming to make someone clear through Dianetic auditing. That's just being a friend, helping someone through a situation.
Yeah. Giving them some relief,
Yeah.
because things can
Um,
really, really mess with a person, and they feel like they're in a pressure cooker, and they don't have to be.
that's right. That's right. A very, very amazing, powerful little modality.
Yeah.
It's just the simplicity blows my mind. Like, I've studied things, like I said, like hypnosis. Oh my God, what a pain in the ass that was to learn. you know, it
Right.
was, it took incredible amount of work to learn how to do hypnosis. But the funny thing was, after I learned hypnosis, I was like, hang on, there's a lot of holes in this. Uh, There's just holes in it. And I actually realized, and I don't know if Ron Hubbard discusses this, but I realized when it comes to hypnosis, um, it's the hypnosis isn't when you're in session. The hypnosis occurs when the reactive mind turns on.
Mm-hmm.
Then you become hypnotized.
Yeah. He mentions that in a lecture.
That's the oh, does he?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then you're
Yeah.
exactly right. that's what happens.
Yeah,
It's
which
full
isn't
on.
resolving it.
No.
It's not resolving it. It's just taking a sidestep. It's ignoring it. It's stepping over the situation
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to straight lining it or straight wire, as they say.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this has been a very, very interesting podcast to do and to go over, and it's always fun to go over these things with you, Arthur, because you're
Yeah.
very, very adroit and adept at, you know, looking at things from up your particular viewpoint, and that's what auditing is all about too. So,
Yeah, that's right.
we'll do more podcasts like this here in the very, very near future. And if you have any suggestions for podcasts that you'd like us to do, feel free to leave us a message on YouTube, and we will get them going. And I hope
Yes,
this
we
is
need more ideas.
yeah,
More
yes,
ideas, more
yeah,
questions.
content. You know, what do you want to hear about? Let us know, and we hope you have a better understanding of what auditing is and how it works and what it isn't. So thanks for being here. And you have any closing statements, Arthur, before we get
Look
this
into it.
production?
If it's something that interests you, look into it. There is a little bit to learn, um, but yeah, and even the learning process is really quite incredible as well, because I found as I was learning it as well, there were so many things I understood about myself more. Even just learning how to get to the stage of just doing basic Dianetic auditing, um, really powerful. And even just learning it, I was able to resolve many things
Mm-hmm.
within myself before even doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was really interesting
Yeah.
process.
It can be very
Yeah,
cathartic just to understand the process. Well,
yeah.
thank you for being here, Arthur. And we will see
Thanks for having
you.
me.
And we will be back with another podcast in a day or two. Namaste, and we love you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.